This is a HeadGum podcast.
Hello. This is Fake the Nation, where we talk about news, we talk about culture, and where we celebrate having said hello for the 400th time. That's right. This show is very aged. This is the 400th episode. We are the Biden of podcasts. I'm your host, Negin Farsad, and I'm just a bag of fossilized remains holding a microphone. That's all I am. But I honestly have to admit that I actually feel like I'm Benjamin Buttoning in the podcast world, because every podcast feels like the first one, you know? And that's because of the listeners and because of the panelists that keep me going. Today, we're gonna do a little political retrospective when we earnestly ask the question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? We'll also look at the Katie Britt phenomenon. We'll look at Wendy's dynamic pricing kerfuffle, and we'll ask if you need a wallet anymore. And dear God, why can't we stop rushing? On this 400th episode, why can't we stop rushing? We're gonna talk about the phenomenon of the constant rush we're all in. Did I rush through my intro? A little bit. Okay. Joining me today to celebrate this very momentous podcast episode, to me and to no one else, it's not really momentous, is a comedian and host of the Political Orphanage podcast, which you must listen to. I've been on it. Everyone's been on it. It's a slutty podcast that way. And it's so fun and so funny, owing primarily to the wonderful man behind it, Andrew Heaton. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Negin. I am so happy to see you, and I'm so excited to be back. And also, I'm old friends with Benary, so this is going to be super fun. I'm honored and thrilled to hang out with you both.
You just received a ding from Fake the Nation. That's a ding in my mind because you said the name of the other panelists before I did, which is a fucking Fake the Nation faux pas. Okay,
you already
fucked up this whole show.
It's over.
All right.
Listeners, I want you to go back to a time in your life when you hadn't heard that name.
Yeah.
And so that I can say we are also joined by a writer, a comedian. You've seen him perform all over the country. He's so fucking funny. In fact, he's the funniest man in the Pentagon. And I don't know. He may have been on the first or second episode of this podcast. I don't remember specifically. And one day a historian, maybe Meacham, who does all those presidential histories, will look into the Fake the Nation archives to see who was on the first or second episode. It is the one and only, my very good friend, Benary Poulton. Hey, Benary.
Hey, it is so wonderful to be here, have the surprise of my being here ruined by Andrew, which is just a classic.
It's fantastic. I just wanted to steal everybody's wind. That's what I wanted to do.
No, I think when we go back, historically speaking, I believe you've introduced me as being on the show millions of times. So I think I have the distinction of being on more shows than actually exist.
Yeah, I know.
I'm so proud to be here.
And that's actually, it's like the premise for the next Christopher Nolan movie is how exactly you were able to do that.
Yes.
You know, because for every historical movie he does, he then does a time bending one. So that's going to be the premise of the next one. And that's
so
really
happy
great.
to be on Fake the Tenet.
Remember he killed a guy in the future and then it was like, and then the bullet showed up like 5 years later, something, you know what I mean? Something like that.
And then it was him kill it. Yeah.
And then it was that guy.
It's always him. It's always that guy.
That's the plot of Tenet, by the way. I think we summarized that very accurately and everybody understands what we're saying. Before we get into the show, I just want to let everyone know that, I have an eye allergy. So if I look like I'm going, Hunchback of Notre Dame, but just like in one eyeball, like that's why. And the fun thing is if you want to see my eyeball, you can do that on YouTube because this show is now on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/Negin Farsad. Mostly, I think you should just subscribe to my YouTube channel because we're populating it with content. And I've got to be honest, I've neglected YouTube most of my adult life. No more shall I neglect YouTube.
Now's the time. You're really getting in on the ground floor, I think, of the YouTube phenomenon. So,
this new thing that all the kids are talking about. But I just figured like there's a lot of like opportunities for Proud Boy content or whatever. And I want to get in on the action and start my own Proud Boy channel.
Do TikTok before it gets banned later today.
Oh, that's right. We're not even talking about that, but how topical, Andrew. This is why we have you on the show.
Thank you.
Because you know one, maybe three things about what's happening in America aujourd'hui.
And I know the pulse of teenagers of America in a very non-creepy way. I meant for that to come more hip rather than creepy. That was supposed to be hip.
That was supposed to be hip.
Yeah. Oh, is that a Billie Eilish poster in the background? He's so hip. He's so hip. Now, before we also get it, so go to YouTube and subscribe as your 400th episode gift to me. But also go to patreon.com/Negin. You can support the show for as little as $4 a month. Oh my God, patreon.com/Negin. Thank you to everyone who supports the show in the very many ways you do. And the primary way is just listen, but also tell your friends and grab their phones. Go to their podcast app and subscribe to this show. They need a strong hand. Okay, let us get into it with topic number 1. We're gonna talk about some items and culture. First up, Wendy's, the burger chain. I was going to say beloved burger chain, but I'm not sure that it's beloved. I think it's Wendy's, the place you end up going to because it's right there. It announced that they're going to experiment with dynamic pricing. And you might be familiar with dynamic pricing. It's the thing that they use with Uber and Lyft and airlines and stuff like that, where the price changes based on demand. Uber will be like a certain price, and then in New York City there'll be one drop of rain. And then you're like, do I get an Uber or do I just buy a Tesla for myself? Like that's the difference in price with surge pricing. It's crazy.
Which you can buy through the Uber app.
Yeah. Tesla will come to your door.
They give you that option now.
Yeah, they do. It's being beta tested in New York City. Folks, the internet backlashed at this dynamic pricing for our favorite square burger. Benary, were you among the backlashers?
Well, what I was among, and of course, let me also just say before I begin that my opinions are my own and in no way reflect those of the United States Army, United States Army Reserve, the U.S. government, coalition partners, real or imagined. So, with that out of the way, let me also say,
because Benary, for those of you who are listening to the very first time, is an army man whose opinions do not reflect any of that.
Just so we're clear, do not want anyone to misinterpret my opinions.
No one will think. Yeah.
But I think with we call it dynamic pricing. It's surge pricing, or more appropriately called price gouging. Like that's what we call. Like I don't. We put these like fun boardroom names to things, but it's like they just want to. They're like, how do we price gouge people? But we call it dynamic pricing. So if you actually want the item, it's going to cost more. Oh,
right.
They have, technically speaking, they've always had dynamic pricing. They have a dollar menu. If I don't feel like paying, $2.50 or $3 for the big burger, I can get the like little junior burger and the little junior fries and the like one chicken nugget or whatever for $1. That's dynamic pricing. This is just straight up like, oh, you actually want like you want it as a meal? That's going to be, what time is it? Yeah, it's going to be $450. Like it's insane that we let companies and corporations get away with this, where it's like, I mean, first off, the fast food's not, whatever. I'm just going to be an angry old man. The fast food's not even fast anymore. You got to wait 10 minutes for fuck these people.
But also, isn't it like if they just did a little average of prices, it would work out to be the same anyway or something? You know what I mean? Like, can they just, I don't know.
You're not thinking about the profit margin. Is the problem.
I'm not, and they're truly working on the margin. So I don't know what the plan is, but like I don't think they're thinking, oh, we can sell this burger for like $17 more, but like they can have, because they're a national chain, such intense profits by adding 20 cents or 50 cents to a burger, and that makes a huge difference for their bottom line. Andrew, what were you going to say?
Well, before I jump in, I need to clarify what I am and not. I am the official spokesperson for the Pentagon. I am also Negin Farsad's gynecologist.
Yep.
And
Yes.
everybody listening at home, I am your personal attorney, and I have power of attorney. So I'm an attorney, a doctor, and an official spokesman for the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And you speak for the trees.
And I
Yeah.
speak for the trees. All right. I'm gonna pose a question to the group here. Have y'all ever been to a happy hour?
Oh,
Sure.
dynamic pricing. Is
That's
that
Dynamic
your
pricing.
point?
That's dynamic. I
Right.
am unbothered by this, but I need to clarify. I am a quarter Vulcan on my dad's side of the family, so I am not as emotionally reactive as the average human, and I acknowledge this. Dynamic pricing can go either way, right? So like if you go to a matinee performance, that's dynamic pricing. If you go to a happy hour, that's dynamic pricing. If you go get an Airbnb that's been reduced by 30% in January because no one wants to go to Sweden in January, that's dynamic pricing. So dynamic pricing is just the company adjusting supply and demand based on a given time. I don't really have any problem with this. Even like, I don't like the feeling of paying more for an Uber when it starts raining in New York, but I would rather have the option to pay more for an Uber than not get an Uber at all. And that's basically what's happening is when they do that surge pricing, they go, instead of paying the Uber driver $8 an hour, we'll give you guys $16 an hour if you want to come out of your house and drive more around in the rain. So I don't really have a big problem with it. Or I should say it's the least bad of two bad options.
But see, that's where I sort of where I start with as well, because the dynamic pricing already existed. That's the dollar menu, the stuff that is cheaper to produce,
Right.
and the more
Well,
expensive stuff subsidizes all of that, right?
To clarify, I don't believe that's dynamic pricing. That's just different products at different prices.
Well, no,
right? So,
but they're trying to move stuff. They're either trying to move stuff that didn't sell as well, so
I
they
think
put a
there's
lower price on it.
The
or
early bird special
Early
is
bird
dynamic
special.
pricing.
So
I
listen, in addition to a lawyer, doctor, gynecologist, I am also the only economist in America, and as such, I'm not entirely confident of this, but I think generally dynamic pricing refers to the price of a specific product, not all of the prices. So the fact that a company will have different products, different prices, I think dynamic pricing refers to when the prices change for the product in a given time.
But what they're doing, in my opinion, is they're using the term dynamic pricing incorrectly, because that's not what they're doing. They're not
Like if they use
dynamic pricing just existed. That's what you did with all your prices. What you're doing is you're trying to sell the public on the idea that you're doing dynamic pricing while you price gouge them. And instead of saying we're just raising prices based on how much the demand is in whatever particular area by whatever metric we're not going to share with you, because we're going to decide what that is based on how we're feeling today or what we want to move today. And because this is, this is trade secrets, and this is, all of the privilege that comes along with that. So there's no transparency. There's just, we're going to charge you more for the thing that you actually came here for. That's what they're telling you. And then they want you to smile and shovel it down your
But
fucking
also
throat.
because the way, Andrew, I wonder, because I understand your Vulcan roots, but like the way that they plan on doing it is that they would have digital boards. So like you could be standing in line and be like, I don't know anything about the Wendy's menu. I'm going to get the Wendy burger. And you look at the thing and it says $4, whatever the fuck it is. And then you get there and it changes to $5. How would you feel, Attorney General Heaton?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And it's a huge honor to now serve the American people as the Attorney General. I would feel the same as when I'm in a bar and the waiter or waitress comes by and goes, by the way, happy hour is going to end in 10 minutes. If you want to get another drink, you ought to do it now before the price goes up. I would feel like that.
But that's not what's happening here.
That's
though.
not. I think it would
if you showed
literally
if you showed up to happy hour.
Listen, I appreciate the perspective that all of these companies are inherently evil and bad, and they're always only raising prices. But is it theoretically possible that, say, like Wendy's has looked at their line on a daily basis and they go, we really don't have a lot of people come in at 2:00 in the afternoon, and the hamburger gasoline style price outside crashes from $3 to $1.50. That might be the only way to get me to go to Wendy's. I haven't been to Wendy's in 24 years. But if I saw the hamburger go from $3.50 to 75 cents, I'd be like, well, now I'd be stupid not to buy it. So I think that could go either way. I think it's just supply and demand.
But see, I think this is bait and switch. What it is if I show up to Wendy's during the happy hour because I'm like, okay, I got $5. I know I can get a meal here for, $4.97 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go in and you're waiting in line, and then all of a sudden it's like $8 because more people showed up than they expected. That's what's happening. They want to raise the prices on things that people want. So that to me is not so much the supply and demand as it is bait and switch. You lured me in here with a price. It'd be the same if I was pumping gas. If I go to the cheaper gas station and your lower price got me to drive into your gas station, and then just as I start to pump the gas, you jack it up 50 cents, I'd be pissed.
I think that you were already paying a different price. You're paying in time. So and theoretically, if you go in at rush hour and it's completely crowded and they're charging $3 a burger and now they charge $4 a burger, you're going to have less time because less people are going to go there. But the main thing
I also think, Benary, you might be pissed because you have underlying anger issues that you haven't worked out vis-a-vis your parents. You know what I mean? Some other relationship.
Benary, is your mom's name Wendy?
So,
just answer the question. Is your
look,
mom's
if I'm going into the fast food joint in the first place. At like off hours.
At off hours.
I heard a
Something's
brilliant.
happened.
I heard a brilliant take on life the other day that I have incorporated into my life. I was talking to a young lady here in Austin, and she said, like, before she ever buys something, like she's going to buy a jacket or a purse or a laptop or something, she just asks herself, is this worth that many corn dogs? So she's figured out she can get a corn dog for $1, I think, at Costco.
Dogs.
Sure. So she goes like, is this worth 40 corn dogs? And generally the answer is no. 40 corn dogs would be better. So what I suggest is before you go into Wendy's, just ask yourself, is this worth however many corn dogs I can buy with that money? And a lot of people will say no. I'm presently one of them. I've been in one of them in 24 years.
And I'm fine with that. What bothers me is the idea that I can decide it's worth
the bait and switch. I think the bait and switch part is really upsetting. Well, let's move on and talk about wallets, which is a related subject. The wallet was developed in the 1300s as a pouch that you carry your little heavy coins in. I believe, Andrew, you still use a pouch.
Yeah.
As our
like a kangaroo. He keeps his younglings in there.
Yeah. They call the old marsupial back in the fraternity.
Now, in the modern day, that pouch is transformed into a wallet with its leather and its card slots and all of that stuff. Now, here's my question. In 2024, we largely pay for things digitally. Is the wallet or pouch a thing of the past? Andrew, how are you feeling about your pouch?
I had never thought about this until you sent me this email, and I'm thinking it's a good idea. So I have a wallet. I have one of those RFID wallets because my mother's paranoid and sent me one for Christmas. So I have like electro-shielded credit cards and stuff in there. But then I thought about
that's hilarious. Okay.
One of my friends showed me this thing called remember how I was all hip earlier?
Yeah, that Billie Eilish poster.
Fun guy who knows all these, very not dated Frasier references as the peak of his pop culture. Like one of my friends used Apple Pay the other day, and I was like, "What black magic is this? Yeah. You can just pay with your phone."
Hold on, Andrew. Just the other day, for the first time, you saw someone use Apple Pay.
I live in Texas. We are 6 to 8 years behind in technology, 20 to 40
Clearly.
it kind of makes sense to me. Like, because I'm guessing you probably can't digitize the IDs yet. Like, you can't just take a picture, but you could just slide it into the back of your phone, right? So I might try this for a week. It'd be one less thing to worry about.
There are digital license, whatever, but they're not necessarily the thing that is acceptable if you're in a fucking traffic situation or whatever. I don't know.
I love a wallet. I mean, I have like a slim wallet. It's more of like it's like the credit card case, whatever.
Yeah.
It's got my ID. It's, but I really like having it. And as we move more digital and like everything becomes just online pay and Apple Pay and one click, I really like carrying cash. I fucking love carrying cash. I become so like, it's the closest I feel like, oh, if something goes down, I have cash. Like,
Right.
like when the banks crash, when the fucking when the Y2K bug finally hits. Talk about trendy references. I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm ready to go.
You don't got to recharge your wallet. If your wallet gets wet, it doesn't ruin your life.
It doesn't ruin my life.
Stranded in Branson, Missouri.
It's not going to give me an error message, and I'm like, a pinwheel of death.
My feeling is like I think about this probably like thrice a week. I think to myself, Negin, just give yourself cash and then spend that, and then you'll know how much you're spending. I feel I fucking have no idea, and then I'll see a statement about how much I've spent, and I'll be like, what? And, you know, and I don't want to be, I want to live in a life where I'm not surprised anymore. And I still haven't done it, right? Because it does sound annoying to carry that much cash, but like, I feel like I do want to try this as a, to see like if it changes my spending habits, because corn dogs is not working on me mentally. I think I need a physical symbol of the money. By which I mean money. I think I need physical money.
Yeah, and I enjoy like my wallet can hold maybe 3 to 4 corn dogs max. So I always know. You know, I'm always able to actually do the ratio.
Someday we can dehydrate corn dogs and press them in a book like a butterfly or something. But until that technology exists,
we're not. It's only 2024. We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
That is a really good. Like when I was in New York, I actually did that. I would because I had an ATM outside of where I worked, and every week I would get whatever the money was. And I was so much. Right now, I'm just using my credit card, and I don't. If it's a small purchase, my dumb monkey brain doesn't think about it. My dumb monkey brain goes, "It's just $3."
It's nothing.
And I'll do that all the time. And then at the end of the month, I'm like, how many times did I buy cocaine? How did I get it on my card?
And then you tip for cocaine on those little square machines.
And you always know how much cocaine you bought by how much bigger the tip gets.
Yeah.
It's like I used to just come to this playground with cash to buy my cocaine, and now it's like it's a different
world. Those days are gone. It's a different world now.
Yeah, post-pandemic life, right? Hashtag.
Could you get an app that yells at you in the voice of like your high school principal or something when you because that's what I need right now. Is right now when I'm spending on my credit card, I'm not keeping track of it. But if the app when you've spent $40 on slushies this week, what are you doing with your life? Like if AI could get into this and be really critical, maybe it could help.
I just want Marty McFly's. I want Marty McFly's principal yelling at me. Be like, you're a loser. Your father's a loser.
By the way, I feel like we just formed an app. If there's anyone in the Fake Nation listenership who can actually help us build the app that was just formed with the voice, but I'm sure we can get Marty McFly's principal or coach. That doesn't seem like that's like the least of our problem. Like, okay, like, and then the tech part, if we could just build the tech part, then I think that's the small part of it that we need to figure out. And then we'll sell this app to people that can be yelled at. I think we should all be yelled at more.
I like where we've landed on this. I like how
financial
prudence through shouting. What we need is more shouting.
That's our takeaway from this segment.
Folks, what is your takeaway from this segment? And how much do you want to hear the voice of Marty McFly's coach? That's the other question. These are the critical questions of our time until we learn how to dehydrate corn dogs and put them in wallets. Let's take a quick break and hear about our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll continue with more. And we are back, and we're ready with topic number 2, politics. It's general election season. I'm so sorry to report. And we're in a nostalgic episode right here on our 400th. So I think it's time to ask in this political segment the age-old question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? We read a little thing about this in Slate, and I thought it was an interesting question because it used to be so top of mind or whatever. They used to talk about that a lot. I feel like in the elections of my youth, in which I didn't really know what was going on. But where is this something that you think about as a voter?
I try as hard as I can not to think about anything that happened in 2020. I think this time 4 years ago, I was eating Oreos out of a vase with a ladle in my bathtub, crying and watching Trek Picard. So I am much better now than I was 4 years ago.
Benary, do you ask yourself this question? Do you see family members? I mean, as we're gearing up for this general election, is this something that fucking anyone's talking about?
I mean, people aren't discussing it in that way, which to me is actually insane because it's, to me, it's less about, it's a like, it's obvious that we're all better off than we were 20 years ago, like that we were in 2020. Because you'd have to just, you'd have to, just memory hole 2020, which is what we've collectively decided to do, apparently.
Yeah.
For good reason.
Yeah.
Really for good reason, but then not to learn the lessons of how we got to 2020.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's less about like, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And more about like, do you want it to get as bad as it got 4 years ago or possibly worse? Because we didn't think it could get that bad. And then it got bad. And then it got like the worse it could get as things compounded upon itself. Then we got out of it. And we were like, instead of being like, let's just, make a vow never to let that happen again. We all just were like, oh, la, la, la. We don't think about that time at all.
And also, interestingly, numbers for all of, like, for CNN have dropped, for MSNBC have dropped, for the New York Times have dropped. Also, interestingly, not like I give a shit, but like numbers for Breitbart have dropped even more dramatically. Not that that was giving news, but just it's interesting because we are all doing the la 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 in a really aggressive way that's supported by the statistics of readership and listenership, by the way, to political podcasts like Fake the Nation. I mean, we saw a decline and then it kind of resumed a little bit, but like, it was like, I did it. I fucking got Biden in office. Now let us never speak of this again. Like this was so, and I mentioned this on last week's episode with Judah Friedlander and Gabe Malika, that I was just like, I don't know, guys, the vibes around this election are so weird. It's like everyone is concerned, but they just don't want to talk about it at all. And we had a reporter on, Lila Raptopoulos from the Financial Times. She covers the culture beat, but she was saying from her political reporter friends that their readership on horse race politics has gone down noticeably. So I think you're right, Benary, that we just and Andrew, like, none of us want to think about you in that bathtub with the Oreos.
No one.
You know what I mean?
No one. Just picture a meerkat, just a bearded meerkat, laying in that tub watching Picard season 1.
I was going to say season 1. Even Picard got better. Picard this last season was.
Now I just look like a pregnant meerkat. Yeah. I've gotten worse, at least physically.
I was gonna say you look so bad today. I'm glad you brought it up.
I look like if you hauled out Jim Henson from the grave. I'm just a corpse of Jim Henson reanimated.
Just more really current references.
I will say,
folks.
I will say, and maybe this is being a little too optimistic, but I think if we're to look at it from the optimistic perspective, there is this sense of, we know it's not a horse race. Like the typical politics of an election year don't apply here because there is no horse race. It's not, who's ahead, who's behind. We know what it's going to be. We already know what November is going to be. And it's almost shining this bright light on us as the American political system, which got so bloated and lengthy and overwrought, and there was just so much cash being made of keeping you glued to the 24-hour news cycle. And people are like, I actually kind of already know. So if you just leave me the fuck alone, I'm going to do my job in November. Let me live my life until then.
Right.
Let's don't have to talk about it because nothing is going to, it's not the usual thing.
You don't think that most Americans they haven't made up their mind on Biden and Trump yet? They're like, gosh, I just need to know what they think about energy policy. I feel like these very obscure people who are historically opaque.
I'm sorry to anyone still on the fence, but you are
Bone is still figuring out what he's gonna do. Remember that guy?
Yeah, you're either I worry about what COVID has done to your brain, or you're just an attention seeker at this point. You're just like, I need the cameras on me. How am I gonna vote?
I like that. I like that. I think part of the reason, going back to your earlier point, Negin, about like why people feel uncomfortable is we're now on our third presidential cycle where people are voting more out of opposition to a candidate than because they like their own candidate. So you go back to very relevant elections, say like Mondale versus Reagan. People just, the people that voted for Mondale did it because they liked him. Where like years later, people voted for Clinton because they liked Clinton. There were still people that voted because they hated Dole or they hated Clinton or whatever, but that changed in 2016. The majority of Trump voters voted because they hated Hillary Clinton. The majority of Hillary voters were scared of Donald Trump. That repeated in 2020. It's probably going to repeat this time based on all numbers. So it's this weird thing where we're voting against somebody more than we're voting for somebody.
Right. Well, let me point out another thing out. This is from the piece, by the way, in Slate. I mentioned it's by Nitish Pawa, and it's called "Did 2020 Ever Even Happen?" I thought it was a really great piece. And he writes, Biden, so he basically says that Biden comes in with the promise of being boring, right? Like that was one of the big attractions for me. Besides his hot, right, exactly. In addition to his hot bod, I was voting for him because he was going to be boring. And then he was going to run the country in a quiet way, the way it had been run basically my entire life. And then the writer writes, the problem was the kind of madcap, exhausting political engagement that Trump brought to the fore does not yield to a void. Biden's choice to not emphasize his presence has consequentially made him the least culturally relevant president of my lifetime, a chief executive with no definitional stamp on the zeitgeist.
Can I? And I understand that feeling, and I understand there's a very interesting thing that's happened during the Biden presidency too, which is I don't think there's ever been more of a disconnect between what is actually happening and the reality of a presidency and how much has been accomplished policy-wise, despite unbelievable, overwhelming opposition, continued opposition, and unprecedented like global events all happening at the same time and this convergence of events and the way in which he's handled it versus how people just feel like the vibes are off. But when you say like, but what would you like? You're like, well, he did that. So, it's like, oh, you want student loan. You want him to tackle student loans. He does that. The Supreme Court strikes it down. He is still found ways using the system and whatever executive powers to forgive student loans and keeps working at it. The amount of things he's been able to get done despite workarounds, he got with no Republican support whatsoever, he got the infrastructure bill passed, which 2 years later we are reaping the benefits for, just in time for an election, by the way. Very smart, savvy political move as well. That the thing that you like,
right? He kind of gets he gets no credit for basically any of it.
The way he's been able to dance through the hurricane of foreign policy right now and thread a needle with people. The fact that he has Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Israel, while Gaza is happening, all like kind of negotiating continually. The fact that like we have the UAE and Saudi Arabia now saying that they're in favor of a two-state solution. I don't think anyone realizes what a massive shift in 75 years of foreign policy that is, that alone. And these are things that he brings to the table that is, it's not just not appreciated. It's kind of like,
buried.
It's kind of like people look at that and like, yeah, but I just wish Biden were someone else.
I
don't know what the guy can do.
I mean, if he was Ryan Gosling,
yes, if he was
do
Ryan
the
Gosling
number at the Oscars, right? Then we would be,
Part of the rancor that's going on right now that I'm seeing, and Negin, I'm 100% with you. I wanted Captain Benadryl to just give Benadryl to the American people and calm down. And somebody said, I don't remember who it is, somebody said the best country in the world is one where you're not afraid to drink the water and you can't remember the name of the president. Like, to Canada's credit, 10, 15 years ago when I started traveling and I would meet Canadians, I'd go, who's your prime minister? And they'd think about it. It would take them a second. And they'd go, Stephen Harper. But they would pause. And I was like, what a blessed country where this is not on the forefront of your mind. And I think that...
Or what a fucking dumb country. You guys don't know who your fucking prime minister is?
Go to fucking school.
We have like lucha libre in terms of our political process. What I worry about is I worry that Trump is not the cause of this, but a symptom of it, and that it's going to keep happening. And that is kind of where my gut is. I think that the last 20, 30 years, there's been this weird shift where politics has become almost like a religious clash, where like I want politics to be boring and procedural. I think it should be like, hey, we all agree we're trying to get to a good place and we're figuring out how to organize the parking lot to yield the most cars. And let's have a fight about that and go get a drink, right? And it's like parties have become people's political identity.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason, it doesn't matter how nice or like whoever the president is can exacerbate that quality, but people are still going to get so worked up about it, even if it's a calm person in the White House.
But
speaking of getting worked up, let's talk quickly about Katie Britt.
Katie Britt.
I just want to say that this podcast is drenched in the blood of patriots.
Yeah, but like with one of those ASMR type things, like you're all like slightly sexual.
I
YouTube
think we all actually kind of just saw a glimpse inside like the closed door GOP meetings when they're just doing their freaky ASMR sex stuff.
By the way, someone, I can't remember which of these senators, said, oh, we chose her because she's a housewife. And it's like, you mean this decorated lawyer who's been practicing for, what are you talking about?
Who's a senator?
She's
a senator.
She's a senator. I'm like, she's a fucking senator. But also, even in
head
her.
of the Chamber of Commerce of Alabama.
So for the people who don't know what I'm talking about, she gave the response to the State of the Union. By the way, I thought the State of the Union was rather delightful. So there's that. But Katie Britt gives the response. She's in her kitchen, and she talks about how Biden is in a bubble or whatever because he doesn't do drop-offs at school or whatever. And I was just sort of like, but aren't you fucking also in that bubble? Like, you're a senator. What are you talking about? Like, no, I mean, it's fine to be like, he's old and it's been, 40 years since he did a drop-off, but like, you have to also recognize your own bubblemanship, I don't know.
My husband and I are frightened. Your husband and you are going to be just fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. You do not need to worry. Other people might. Yeah.
Well, so then the big scandal that erupted from her response, besides I was trying to think if Rubio's drinking water was worse than Katie Britt's high school theater,
and don't forget
best supporting actor.
Don't forget Joe Kennedy's poor chapstick incident.
Poor chapstick incident. That's right. He looked like he was sweating on his fake chin or whatever. I do think Rubio's was still like a little like just weirder because it was a scramble for water and we all had to wait and it was just like, but it was live, that was so weird. But Katie Britt's performance, the thing that actually emerged right after was not just that she did too much, but that she also lied very clearly about an incident where she talked about a sex worker that she spoke to that had been, suffered, and it's because of Biden and all this stuff. It turns out it didn't happen during the Biden administration. It happened during the George W. Bush administration 1 kabillion years ago. It also didn't happen in the United States. It happened in Mexico. So it was like everything was true except for
really
most
splitting
of it.
hairs here, Negin. This sounds to me like it's I don't see what the problem is.
Tomato here.
Yeah.
I mean,
sex worker, Mexico. I got it, but Biden's bad. Okay, that was my takeaway.
Okay.
So, I'm just shocked because it also feels like an own goal. Like, you didn't need to say any of those things.
I don't think they ever need to say, like, I don't get why we didn't. I don't think we should have State of the Union addresses. They strike me as this weird, like, British attempt to create a monarch that I don't think we need to be doing anyway.
That's true.
And I really don't understand why we do the rebuttals. Because, like, the State of the Union address, I get it. You're the president. You've spent your entire life trying to get to this point. You've ruined your family. You've done all these things. And I just want I get why you're doing it. The rebuttal, though, am I right in thinking that we only remember the ones that like screw up, we make fun of? Like, I don't remember a rebuttal ever turning the American sentiment. I don't really know what the point is.
You couldn't name it. In fact, if anyone remembers your rebuttal, you fucked up.
It's bad.
You're shooting for neutral and unmemorable. That's the best case scenario.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think, look, I do think like this, the idea of the State of the Union is kind of cool. It's like, of your presidential duties, that's kind of like, I'm actually of the belief, like, that's one of the few times we should hear from the president. Otherwise, like, something bad has happened.
Yeah, otherwise shut the fuck up. But like, let's hear from you this one time a year. That sounds great.
Because
I see that.
kind of, Heaton, what you were saying earlier, I actually believe like we get too much into the weeds of the superstardom of our elected officials, and I view them as like what they should be, which is civil servants. We've hired you to do a job
100%.
for a certain period of time. Do your job. Every so often, tell me about the job you're doing. You listen to the constituents because it's representative democracy. So you got to kind of do what we put you in office to do. And if we don't like it, we get you out of office. So there's a balance there. But instead, what we've turned the American system into is a reality TV show, which is why we got a reality TV star as the president, because it's like that's how we rewired ourselves to think that everything has to be like that. And that in the absence of drama, we'll fill that void with whatever drama we can think of. And
also we've also filled the place that local news and local politics used to take.
Yeah.
We filled that with national politics, which is generally useless for you as an individual. Arguing over the left turn on Maplewood,
it's great as an angry wedge issue.
It creates an angry wedge issue, whereas you should instead be talking about, golf cart lanes or whatever. People talk about, how people are always talking about golf cart lanes.
Yeah, where you are, or like potholes if you're like a real American. But yeah, of course, golf carts and potholes.
Negin, I think you're 100%. I agree with both of you.